Hi everyone and welcome to my channel. I am Hardik Khandelwal, a software engineer at Google, and today we will be talking about the next question in the series Top Google Questions on Leetcode. The question for the day is merge intervals. So let's quickly jump to this problem. So if you look at this problem, right, it says that you have been given an integer array of intervals where each interval can be defined between two numbers start I and end I, and you need to merge all overlapping intervals and return them as an array itself. So if we look at the input, so you are given a 2D array of integers intervals, and you need to return a 2D array of integers as well, and you need to merge the overlapping intervals. So the first thought that comes in my mind is, what do I mean by overlapping intervals? So let's take a look at it. Suppose I give you an interval 1 2 and I give you an interval 2 3 and say we plot them on a line 1 2 3 4 5 6. So this interval 1 2 will extend till 1 2 and this interval 2 3 will extend till 2 3. So if you see here, there is an overlap between these lines at point 2. So this will be an overlapping interval and we need to merge this interval, and the resulting interval would be 1 3. So in this problem, you need to find all the overlapping intervals, merge them and return them as a 2D array. Let's take a look at some sample examples. So 1 3, 2 6, 8 10, 15 18, these are the intervals you have. From the problem itself, we can see that 1 to 6 is an overlapping interval that overlaps 1 3 and 2 6. So we have 1 to 6. There is no overlapping interval for 8 to 10, so it would be 8 to 10. And there is no overlapping interval for 15 to 18, so it is 15 to 18. In the second example, it's 1 4 4 5. So these intervals overlap and the final output is 1 to 5. Right? So another problem that comes in my mind, and you should absolutely ask your interviewer, is, are these intervals inclusive? Right, so what do I mean by inclusivity? I mean that should I include these numbers as well, that is start and end. So your interviewer might tell you that, hey, these are inclusive intervals, or he might say, or he or she might say that these are non-inclusive intervals. But how do you test it on LinkedIn? Or how do you test it on Leetcode? So maybe what I can do is, I can try it with something like this. So go to test cases, right? You put an interval 1 2 and 2 3, right? Try to run it. Oh, I forgot the comma. Try to run it and look at the expected output. So expected output is 1 3. So that means that these intervals are inclusive. Now, another question that comes in my mind is, if I look at the input, it seems that these numbers or these intervals are in sorted order by their starting value. So you might ask your interviewer that, are these numbers sorted by their starting value? So let's verify it. Maybe like I put 2 3 first and I put 1 2 next. So if it would be validating the assumption, Leetcode might throw some exception. But it says that 1 3. So it means that it is not necessary that these numbers are in sorted order. So you should ask your interviewer these clarifying questions. So with these things in mind, let's quickly jump on to the draw.io and look at how can we solve it. So I've taken an example. Let's let our intervals array be 1 3, 2 6, 8 10, 9 12, 14 15. So I'm assuming that this is sorted by the start index or the start of the interval. Why would you like to sort it by the start of the interval? I think how sorting it by start of the interval helps is, you would have nearby elements together, and you don't need to search the entire array to find a nearby element. So the first step is definitely gonna be to sort this entire array by the first index, and if the first index is same, you should sort it by the next index. Now, if I talk about merging these intervals. So let's take a look at 1, 3, right? And let's also try to maintain maybe a linked list or a list that store these intervals for your final answer. So maybe we have a list, right? So we take a look at 1, 3. Since there is no element in the list, we push 1, 3 over here. And we check with the next element, 2, 6. So we check if 2, 6 is overlapping with 1, 3. So when will 2, 6 overlap with 1, 3? If the value of the start index lies between these two values. So does 2 lie between 1 and 3? Yes, 2 lies between 1 and 3. So we should update our final value or the end value of this to the maximum of these two values, right? And ideally this value would be greater because this is sorted with respect to the end index. So this value would become 6 then, or we should actually, my bad, we should update it to the maximum of these two values. So we update this interval to 1, 6, right? Then what next? We go to our next interval. So our next interval is 8, 10. We compare that if 8 comes between 1 and 6. Since 8 doesn't come between 1 and 6, we should start a new interval in this array or in this list, and we would have 8, 10 over here. Now we look at our next element, which is 9, 12. Now we check if 9 lies between 8 and 10. So since 9 lies between 8 and 10, it means that these two intervals overlap. Since this is already the smallest value because we have already sorted it by the start index, we need to update the end value to be the maximum of 10 and 12. So we update this interval itself to be the maximum of 10 and 12. So it becomes 12, and then we go to the next number, right? Now when we reach the next number, we take a look at it. 14 doesn't come in between 8 and 12. So what we do, we simply add a new element and proceed ahead. We reach the end of this array now, and in the end, in this particular list, we would have all the intervals with us. So, and if we look at the return type, so this would be an integer array. So we may need to convert this list into an integer array. And this should ideally solve our problem. So let's quickly take a look at the code for it. One thing that I should definitely check for each and every problem is this array empty, right? So I will simply check if intervals.length double equal to 0, and if it is the case, then I simply return intervals. So I say that, hey, there is nothing to merge, so return intervals. The second thing that I really require is a list to store these elements. So one question that might come to your mind is, why do I require a dynamic list? Maybe a linked list or array list. Why don't I do it using an integer array? Because I want to return this integer array. So the reason is you don't know the size of your answer right now. You don't know how many intervals you might be merging. So it is better to store it in a dynamic list. So let's use a linked list. Right. So why am I using a linked list? Because I don't need to randomly access these elements, and it should be a linked list of integer array. Let's call it merge list, and let's create this one. And we should put the first element of this intervals array in this list itself. So what I do is I do merge list dot add, and let's create a new integer array of 2 elements, and the first element is going to be interval 0, 0, and the second element of this interval array is going to be interval 0, 1. Right. Now what did we do in this problem was we iterated from I equal to 1 till the end. So let's write a loop for it. So for loop integer I equal to 1, I less than intervals dot length I plus plus. Alright, so one important thing that we forgot to do right now was we forgot to sort this intervals array, because if you remember, we are not certain if these intervals are sorted or not, and our solution is based on the assumption that it is sorted by the first index. So let's quickly first sort it out before proceeding ahead. So we do arrays.sort, we pass intervals array, and we write a lambda expression to sort this one. So if you don't know about lambda expressions and you want a video about them, please comment about it in the comment section and I will make a video for those. So we first check if the first element is not equal in both these arrays. So I simply write compare both of them. So I simply write integer dot compare a0 comma b0. Else we should compare the second element if the first element is same in both of them. So we do a1 comma b1. Now this integer array is already sorted. Alright, so now what do I do next? So I first get the current interval which is under consideration by calling merge list dot get last. So why last? Because I am adding new intervals in this linked list, right? So if I am working on interval 14, 15 and there is another element here, so I need to get the last interval or the last value, and this would be the current interval under consideration. Once I have the current interval, I will check if there is an overlap. Right, now how do I check if there is an overlap? So I will pass the current interval there and I will pass the value of the start of the interval at current index. And let's also quickly write this is overlap function. So we write a boolean is overlap function that takes current interval as argument and that also takes the start value of the next interval. So next interval start, and as discussed, right, so suppose like the current interval was 1, 3 here and this interval was under consideration. So if the start of this interval, that is 2, is in between 1 and 3, we would say that there is a overlap. So we simply check it here. So we return if next interval start is greater than equal to current interval start, which is represented by current interval 0, and next interval start is less than equal to current interval end, we would say that there is an overlap. So if there is an overlap, we update the end of the current interval with the maximum value between the current end and the end of the interval at index I. So what did we do just here was, if I am comparing these two values and there is an overlap between them, we would update the maximum value of this particular element to be the maximum of this element and this element. So this would become 1, 6, which is our desired answer. And if there is not an overlap, we add a new element to this list, and so we call merge intervals dot add, and this would become I0, I1. So one question might come, why am I creating a new array and not adding reference to the previous array? Because it might be possible that you might use the same input for other problems as well. So it's usually better to create a new output. Okay, now we have a merge logic. Now let's quickly convert this list into an array. Right, so let's quickly convert this list into an array. So let's write a function for it. So we write a function integer array convert list to array, and we take a linked list of integer array here. Let's call it merged list, and or let's call it L, and we want to convert it to an array. So first of all, let's create a 2D integer array because we are taking an integer array, a list of integer arrays here, and let's call it ARR is equal to new integer array. The size is going to be the size of the list, and second dimension should be left unknown because we would be referencing these arrays to this list itself. And the next thing that I will be doing is let's also keep a variable for the current index. Initially it is equal to 0. I will be using an enhanced for loop to iterate through this list, and I will do ARR of current index to be equal to this should be a, and I will do a current index plus plus, and in the end I would simply return ARR. So this would converted. So we call this function return convert list to array, and we pass this merged list, and this will return me the merged array. And yeah, so let's try to quickly run this code. So it passes for this one. Let's try to submit it, and yes, the code is submitted. So I hope you liked my solution about merge intervals, and you should be able to solve it now. The link to the question is given in the description section. And if you like this video, please click the like button. And I make regular videos on data structures and algorithms, problem solving, interviews, system design, and tech in general. So please don't forget to subscribe my channel. Thanks a lot. Have a good day. Bye.